Normally for story behind the song, we usually talk about a story that has some sort of connection to the song, but usually it's kind of a little bit more indirect in some form of another. But for today on Story Behind the Song, it's not so much the story behind the song as it is the more of the story in the song. Because today we're actually going to be talking about a song that is kind of a little bit of a short synopsis of someone's life. Dare I say, a biography done in music form. And I think many people would actually be pretty impressed overall with this particular story. And unfortunately, it's a band and an album and a song that I think not a whole lot of people actually talk about or maybe even know. There is a very serious tone that I do want to keep for this particular story in the song. So I'm actually going to do my outro now, so that way we could actually kind of keep that serious tone going. Normally for this sort of structure with story behind the song, we actually do a documentary talking about the particular story and how it's exactly tied to a song. But I want to go a little bit of a step further and actually do a reaction to said song. Just so that way, if the reaction video gets nuked, this documentary wouldn't go down with it. At least, that's the theory at least. Sometimes YouTube picks and chooses as they go along. And I'm actually really excited to talk about this particular band because Girlschool is quite possibly one of my favorite bands of all time, so I'm really excited to talk about this story. And as much as I really would love to talk about it, I know for a fact at some point I'm going to hit a wall doing this. So in order to keep story behind the song alive, so if you know of any bands and artists that have a story in one way or another that's tied to a particular song, so I would love to hear some recommendations from you guys down in the comment section. And believe me when I tell you, go completely gloves off, because honestly, it shouldn't really matter the artist, the genre, because I do think it is something that is very unique, rare, and quite possibly a lot of us probably never heard of the song or the band for that matter. Kind of similar to this particular story that we're going to be covering today. But if you want to go the extra mile and support me and my channel, links in the description below to do so. Really appreciate all of those that do. And for now, kick back, relax, and let's hear the story in the song. So our story begins in 1978. A little all-female rock group by the name of Girlschool, gaining a slow reputation in the British new wave heavy metal scene. So it's widely understood that Black Sabbath is the band that is well known for kind of really being the pinnacle of the start of what we know as the true foundation of heavy metal. Their influence was so vast, even though they may not have influenced bands directly, they may have influenced some bands subconsciously, gravitating to a more heavier, darker sound than what was less common in the acid rock scene in the 1970s. And in the mid-70s, Britain saw a influx of artists that had this very similar style. And the names were vast. Just to name a few, bands like Def Leppard, Venom, my favorite band of all time, Motorhead. Kind of get used to hearing Motorhead because we're probably going to hear them a lot throughout this entire video. and some lesser known bands such as Rock Goddess and the band that we're going to be covering today, Girlschool. Once again, British New Wave heavy metal is very vast, but these are the few that I'm just going to pick as an example. And I may actually be familiar with some of the bands I just mentioned. Personally, I actually find myself gravitating to British New Wave heavy metal in terms of all the different subgenres of rock and roll. I feel like British New Wave is the one that kind of speaks to me the most because it's metal, but they also have those traditional standards of just classic songwriting and storytelling. And maybe with the help of Girlschool today, we'll be able to show that. Girlschool did find it very difficult in their early beginnings, mostly because with a all-female rock group, they did try their best to actually try and get a male vocalist.
The early days when we first, formed the band, the reason that we had to be a girl band was because we couldn't find any boys that wanted to play with us.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, simple as that. Mind you, I don't blame them too much because we couldn't actually play anything really. We just wanted to be in a band,
Yeah.
So, but obviously, the idea then was to find like-minded girls who wanted to do the same. Yeah. So that's how we became an all-girl band.
Because it was widely kind of just known and acceptable that if you have a vocalist, you'll probably want a guy to do it. But whether it be the intimidation or just the fact that you're synonymous with a all-female rock band, most guys didn't want this attachment, and women didn't really have their place in rock and roll and heavy metal at the time. Many female musicians would even bring up, the more further you go back, the more you would hear how harder it was for certain female rockers to actually break through.
I think in the beginning, people didn't really know what to make of us. But, they just, I think first of all, just looked at us as if to say, what the hell is going on here,
Did you get any heckles?
Oh, God, yeah. It always used to be, get your tits out, basically, I used to say, get yours out first.
And unfortunately for Girlschool, this was no exception. Because they couldn't land a male vocalist, they just decided to say, screw it, why don't we do it? As a matter of fact, if you listen to a lot of their early albums, you would notice that there would probably be 2 or 3 members switching back and forth between doing vocals. Over the years, with change-up within the band, obviously there was, over time, a vocalist that would step up to the plate and be more solidified. Little fun fact, probably getting a little ahead of myself here, but Girlschool is actually one of the longest all-female rock bands in history. So yeah, Girlschool is actually still active to this day, but like I said, I'm getting ahead of myself, so let's stay on track. Girlschool wouldn't just get negative comments that didn't just come from fans, but also came from other musicians as well. Upon doing research, I'm sure that Jeff Beck probably didn't mean this in a negative way, or it's possible that someone could have misinterpreted his words, or perhaps maybe there was a lack of context for this particular statement. All I'm saying is, for as well known as he is, I can't imagine him actually saying this like just flat out and meaning it. It is also very possible that he hasn't really, at the time, heard of a female band or a really good female guitarist. Whichever the case, I did find this one particular statement. A statement that reads something along the lines of, "There's no way a girl's playing that guitar." For as well known as Jeff Beck is, I'm sure there's probably something to it that we're probably missing from this context, but upon researching, this is a quote that actually came up more than once. I don't deny that Jeff Beck said this, but I do question perhaps maybe there was other context that could be potentially missing in this retelling of this quote. That being said, huge legend in the industry and good friend of the band Girlschool, Lemmy Kilmister from Motorhead, when reminiscing about his time when he first met Girlschool, Lemmy would have a completely different tone by saying, "I thought they were great. I got them on the tour in the first place." And everyone went like, "Ugh, girls?" And I said, "Yeah, they're just as good as you." Kelly Johnson on a good day is just as good as Jeff Beck in his rock and roll days. She's a brilliant guitar player. I have to imagine with a statement like this coming from Motorhead, from all the trials and tribulations that Girlschool went through over the years, I could only imagine statements like this is what gave Girlschool courage to keep moving on. Because chances are you're probably going to need friends in this industry. Quite possibly around the time of Girlschool's biggest success was actually around the time when Girlschool was touring with Motorhead. I feel like I could probably do a standalone video on this, so I'm probably going to regret not going into detail for this video, but Motorhead and Girlschool, not only would they tour together, but they would actually share the same stage and even do a collaboration with their EP, St. Valentine's Day Massacre, a reference of a particular event that took place around Valentine's Day amongst organized crime and prohibition. No one was charged for this heinous attack, but it's heavily believed that it most likely was Al Capone that organized the attack, but no evidence could prove that. And for Girlschool, this collaboration, they actually even went with a supergroup name of Head Girl, taking both the name Head from Motorhead and Girl from Girlschool and mashing it together. This EP would feature Motorhead covering a bunch of Girlschool songs and vice versa, with Girlschool covering a bunch of Motorhead songs, with one brand new track called Please Don't Touch. But I do have this copy of Ace of Spades, and under the bonus tracks to this particular album, they actually have Motorhead's version of St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And this is actually how I would actually first hear Girlschool. Unfortunately, being the ignorant teenager that I was in high school, it didn't dawn on me that I should probably look into this band. That would actually come many years later, but I am kind of glad I did take that journey, just a little saddened that I didn't do it sooner. With the success of St. Valentine's Day Massacre, Girlschool would actually go on to quite possibly their next biggest hit. With the following year, in 1981, Girlschool came out with Hit and Run. Hit and Run is just an amazing classic song. Any fan of hard rock and heavy metal, I think, would absolutely love this song. This was actually the very first song that I've heard to where I actually fell in love with Girlschool. And truly, this was the start of my music journey to where I realized there are unknown bands out there that have really good music that no one just talks about. And all the more reason why I could always maybe default to some of the biggest names in the industry, but for some reason for me, I actually find the bands in more of like the underground scene or the scene that just doesn't get a whole lot of views or knowledge of, that's the thing that kind of keeps me going. And this song from Girlschool, Hit and Run, really spoke volumes to me and encouraged me to kind of seek out more of this band. But sadly, the good times wouldn't live on forever. As Girlschool was leading into the mid-80s, there wasn't just a change in their sound, but there was also a change in their lineup. Kelly Johnson would actually leave Girlschool. With the wake of Kelly Johnson's absence, ultimately Girlschool would find a guitarist and singer and a keyboardist as a replacement. Girlschool would ultimately try to tap into the American market. Girlschool would change their sound by trying to make themselves more appealing to an American audience. Unfortunately, though, with this change up, not just with their lineup, but with their overall sound, this kind of alienated the audience that they garnered over the years. Eventually, Girlschool would revert back to the style and the sound that got them to the ball to begin with, but we're kind of here to focus on more of Kelly Johnson. Kelly would actually find her way to the States. She would actually get in contact with a former musician herself, Vicky Blue. And Vicky Blue ended up becoming Kelly Johnson's new manager. I thought this little detail was very interesting to me, mostly because I actually do kind of get Runaways and Girlschool confused. Vicky Blue was the bassist for the Runaways. There is two individuals in particular, with one being from Girlschool, the other being from the Runaways, respectively. I am not going to go into that right now. I'll bring this up again later. I'll bring this up again inevitably when we cross that bridge. But both of them got their start in the 1970s. One, of course, is an all-female rock band from the UK, with the other being an all-female rock band from the United States. And even though that Girlschool could still be heard to this day, unfortunately for the Runaways, they would end up disbanding. However, there are two members that you can still hear to this very day. My favorite from the Runaways, Lita Ford, is still active in the metal scene, but the more successful was quite possibly Joan Jett. Definitely more of a punk rocker than metal. But both of these women are very good in their own right. So upon doing research for this video, I actually had no idea that Vicky Blue actually was a manager for Kelly Johnson. So that was just like one more connection between these two bands that I now just know about. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Kelly Johnson, with the help of Vicky Blue, Kelly Johnson would start her own band with the help of Vicky Blue by putting together the World's Cutest Killers. There would be a name change to the Renegades. All of this would be short-lived as the band would ultimately disband in the end. Kelly Johnson would find her way back to native country of England, and she would actually even take up sign language, finding work in the deaf community. But Girlschool wouldn't be without Kelly Johnson forever. In 1993, Kelly Johnson would actually find her way back in Girlschool. However, within a decade, Kelly Johnson would leave Girlschool once again, swapping her out with Jackie Chambers. And all of that would take place in the year 2000. Because 7 years after that, in 2007, Kelly Johnson would actually pass away by losing her battle with spinal cancer. The other reason why I couldn't bring up the connection between the Runaways and Girlschool is because just 1 year earlier, in 2006, drummer Sandy West of the Runaways also passed away of cancer. The only difference being Sandy West passed away of breast cancer and Kelly Johnson passed away of spinal cancer. Thus being this one of the main reasons why when I first was getting into Girlschool, I would actually find myself getting confused between the Runaways and Girlschool, because both of them had a member that passed away of cancer. The death of Kelly Johnson shook Girlschool, but the old saying goes, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Girlschool would bounce back, and they would give a send-off to not just a fellow bandmate, but a friend. The active members of Girlschool would end up putting their best foot forward by giving the best rock and roll send-off to their friend. I've always heard that the song from AC/DC, Back in Black, is actually a song dedicated to Bon Scott, their original vocalist. Girlschool would honor Kelly Johnson's memory not just with a song, but a full album, even getting some help from legends and close friends within the industry to help round out this entire album. People such as Phil Campbell, Lemmy Kilmister of Motorhead, Tony Iommi, and the late great Ronnie James Dio of Black Sabbath, and that's just to name a few. Both Lemmy Kilmister and Ronnie James Dio would both lend their voice in this album, and Girlschool would end up doing a song called I Spy, but under the bonus tracks, you could say that there was a Black Sabbath cut of guitarist Tony Iommi and Ronnie James Dio on vocals, with the rest of Girlschool filling out the blank spots. That song being, of course, I Spy. And even a familiar voice can actually be heard on this album. Kelly Johnson would actually receive her final credit to a Girlschool track on this album. There's a song called Other Side, to where they actually took a unreleased recording of Kelly Johnson humming a melody. Normally where a guitar solo would be placed, they decided to actually go with this recording. And just a little personal note here, personally, I actually did lose somebody that was actually close to me. I cannot tell you how much listening to the song Other Side from this album actually just speaks volumes. I actually did have a little bit of a dream that I had to where I actually felt like I was having just a regular conversation with this individual that's no longer around. I'm not going to go into full details about this individual because it is a family member and I absolutely love him, care about him. I think about him a lot every day. There was one particular day to where I do recall waking up from a dream and just having just a very optimistic conversation with this individual that's no longer with us. And I actually kind of got excited to the point to where I actually woke up, and then the realization of reality kicked in. The reality of having the conversation I always wanted to have, the conversation that I needed to have, and the dark side of the conversation that I will never have again. Throughout this entire song, Other Side, I cannot tell you how many emotions and feelings and things that happened that I felt when I lost this particular individual in my life. It's one thing when you lose like a parent because they're older, they're most likely going to pass at some point in your lifetime, and that's just something that you're just going to have to accept at some point in your life. Because for most of us, it's probably going to happen one way or another. And as sad as that is, it kind of hits very different when someone's roughly the same age as you and they're just no longer there. But there's a line from the song that goes something like, I see you there in my dreams when you come talk to me. You can be there in my dreams. I need you to be my guide. I need you to be by my side. I'll meet you on the other side. Throughout the entire song, if you lose somebody in your life, this song would speak volumes to you. Really kind of feel like words cannot accurately describe the feeling that you get from this. So I know for a fact that Girlschool made this song in relation to what they went through with their loss of their friend, Kelly Johnson. Looking at this song, listening to it, reading the lyrics, the relevancy of having something very, very similar happen to me and having a song that is just directly tied to everything. It sends chills up my spine every so often. if I don't actually cry myself, I have that feeling of like I'm going to cry at some point. And the funny thing is, this is not even the song that we're going to be talking about today. Truly, the amount of talent and expertise that Girlschool put into this album, with some help of some friends within the industry, Girlschool absolutely gave a beautiful send-off to their friend. If you look at the cover art to the album, you would notice that the album kind of is brazened with Kelly Johnson's, I would probably say, bronze statue-like-esque, a depiction of her face on the album cover, where a portion of her face is decayed and you can actually see the skull underneath, giving it that more dark and metal undertone. Her hair is kind of morphed and turns into wings. Not only is Kelly Johnson's face on the album cover, but the name of the album is just as fitting as the name of the song dedicated to Kelly Johnson. The name of the album is Legacy. And the name of the song is Legend.